was 16 at the time, and my first job was at a local amusement park. At that time, I weighed about 120 pounds and was somewhat tall, around 5'7". It was a pretty boring and lonely job. My boss never let me talk to other workers in other shops. That's why she moved me to one of the retail shops, all the way across the park, which is actually pretty dangerous because I have no one else around me. I was standing outside the entrance to my shop to get some fresh air. I saw a guy walking by with a really nice camera. I asked him a few questions about it since I was trying to save up to buy a GoPro for my trip to the Dominican Republic that same summer. We struck up a conversation about the camera and then it started to rain. He came into my shop and looked around while I was just hanging out at my register. This man was about 50 or 60 years old and really nice, but this is when things get a little weird. He asked me what I wanted to do when I get older. At that time, I wanted to be a special effects makeup artist, so that's what I told him. He said that he has a friend and needs someone to do makeup for him for his movie. Then he asked if I was interested, and I had to come up with some excuse as to why I didn't want to do it, or give him my personal email address, which he asked for. I told him that my mom wouldn't allow me to do that, especially with a man that I did not know. I bet you're all wondering why I didn't call security or anything like that. Well, I can't call security unless I feel threatened, which I didn't. This guy was very calm and collected, but at the same time, downright creepy. I stopped talking to him for a bit, just to text my manager. He walked over to my register and just stayed there, trapping me inside that corner. Quickly texted my manager, "Help. There's this guy in my shop and he won't leave." I tried to do that quickly so he wouldn't see me. After standing at my register for a few minutes in silence, he walked back over to the wall to look at stuff and pretend to be busy when other customers walked in. That's when he asked to take a picture of me. I got so weirded out. I said, "Sure." He then snapped the photo. I gave this really weird look in it because I truly was weirded out. A few minutes after, my manager walked in to tell me that we were going to go close. I was happy, but this is not the end of it. Around 9 at night, the man would not leave still, even when my manager was in there. He stayed in there for 2 more hours, and it wasn't until 11 p.m. when my manager kind of told him, "Hey man, you gotta go." After he walks out, my manager turns to me and was like, "Was that your dad?" I said, "Hell no, I don't even know who that guy was." She was shocked and absolutely creeped out, as was I, obviously. I shut the garage door to the shop and stayed inside to count the money. As soon as we were about to leave, we looked outside the window to see if the guy was still there, and sure enough, he was. He was just waiting in his car for me to leave. We then had to call some other managers down there to where I was while it was in the pouring rain to escort me to my car, which of course was on the other side of the park. To this day, I don't know what would have happened if I walked back to the building by myself. I still think maybe he would have tried to abduct me or hurt me. I really don't want to know. I'm just so thankful my manager and everyone else was there to help me through that entire nightmare, and I will always thank them with my life. This happened when I was around 11 or 12 during the summer holidays. About me at the time, I was a male about 5 feet tall, out of shape, and very shy. I was traveling with my parents in Europe, and we had been to Barcelona and Paris before, with our next destination being Tarragona in Spain, where an amusement park called Port Aventura was located. We had scheduled to stay there in one of the hotels for 4 days and to visit the park, the water park, and beach club. Now, the story I'm about to tell happened on the 3rd day in the main park. It was getting late. Most of the areas of the park were closed except for the Mediterranean area, as the show with the fountains, lights, and fireworks was being held over the lake that night. As it was the week of the park's anniversary, I asked my parents if it was okay if we could stay and watch the show. They were much too tired after an entire day of running around the amusement park, and needed to go to the information desk to make sure things we had bought were properly sent to our hotel room. I begrudgingly obliged. As we were in the information center, I felt the need to go to the bathroom. I asked my mother if I could go and where the nearest one was. It turns out the closest one was at the edge of the Mediterranean area. My parents were busy at the info desk, and I have no siblings, so they told me to just go alone. I wish I had waited for them to be done, so I could have just gone with my dad, because what then transpired was pretty traumatizing. I navigated myself back to the Mediterranean area and to the bathrooms. The entire area was very busy, with lots of people who were crowded by the edge of the lake to watch the show. I entered the bathroom and went on with my business at a urinal. So I noticed there's a man looking towards me. I normally don't like it when people stare at me, as I was shy. But this time, instead of embarrassed, I felt danger. I glanced back at the man. He was about 6 feet tall and in his mid-20s. Well-built physique, very short hair, almost shaved. Caucasian and wearing a gray hoodie, with dark blue jeans and black leather boots. He immediately struck me as the kind of person you wouldn't find in an amusement park. I'm not sure why. And he was standing in front of the second urinal, as if he was using it, but I definitely had the feeling he wasn't. I noticed him glancing over at me a few more times. I was then done and eager to leave. I tried to pass behind him. As I did, I noticed he tried to reach for me. I barely avoided his hand, and he grunted, while I made whimpering noises. The bathroom was very crowded, so no one noticed it. As I neared the exit, he left his urinal. I then left the restroom itself, looked over at the lake, and the show had started. There were images being displayed on the water of the fountains with the projector. Loud music was blasting all through the speakers. I tried to blend into the crowd, hoping to lose him. After about a minute of making my way through the cluster of people, I looked back, and not 10 meters there he was, right behind me, following me through the same paths between the herd that I had cut through. He now had his hood up, covering his face, and I could feel him staring me down. I also noticed he was now wearing what I thought were black fingerless gloves. Alarms were going off in my head, as my previous stance on the situation went from weird and creepy to downright dangerous. I turned and started to desperately get to an area I could run away in. After about 15 more seconds of squeezing through people, I reached the final stretch of the lakeside pathway. It was empty, and too far away from the main show for anyone to be there. Yet the speakers were still playing loudly here. Ahead was a maintenance side path, with the gate slightly ajar, and to the left was a turn leading back to the plaza with the Info Central building. I ran as fast as my asthmatic, out-of-shape self could towards that turn. I could hear the man running behind me, his boots getting louder and louder behind me. He was gaining on me. I started to panic and even ran faster and faster than I thought I could, but he was still getting closer. I finally reached a turn, changed direction so fast I leaned towards the ground and nearly slipped. I felt motion behind me as if someone had taken a swing, and I could hear the man complain in a language I did not recognize. My working theory is that it was Russian, but it was some Slavic dialect for sure. I kept running through the plaza directly to the information building, but I didn't hear the man running anymore. I turned around and saw him slip into the service gate at the end of the street. I ran inside the building, grabbed my mom's leg, stuttering and almost crying. She was still occupied with the lady at the counter. And though she saw me distressed, she told me to go sit outside and wait and tell her when we left. I tried to protest, but she would not listen and was paying keen attention to the lady still. As I walked over to sit on one of the chairs, I looked out the door and scanned the plaza with my eyes. I didn't notice anything at first and almost looked away, but I saw something behind a direction sign posted next to a tree in the most remote and dark corner of the plaza. It was the same man. I felt like we made eye contact. I turned away and sat in the chair furthest from the entrance. When we were leaving, I looked over in the same direction again, and he wasn't there anymore. I told my parents, but since I had a vivid imagination as a kid, they chalked it up to me being paranoid because I was alone, and that, even if it were real, there were way too many witnesses for someone to try to pull something like that of the sort. I wasn't happy to be called a liar about this, but considering how thick-skulled my parents can be, I didn't insist. I was just happy to gotten out of there unscathed. I've tried to forget this encounter and was successful. But having run into the subreddit and other similar stories of near kidnappings, this resurfaced in my mind, and I decided to post it. As I was typing my story out, I realized how bad this situation was. The people around at the time were so distracted by the show, no one would have seen me get taken, especially with that loud music. No one would have heard me scream or struggle. And the fact that the maintenance gate was open, and I saw the man enter it, means I almost ran right to where he wanted me to be. To think that I almost got kidnapped right in front of a crowd of people boggles my mind. And I've never gone alone anywhere in amusement parks since. So this takes place about 6 months ago at my job. Here's some background. I'm 19 years old. I was 18 at the time. And I work at a small amusement park / arcade in a semi-rural area, which generally gets a good amount of people. This happened to be during our summer season. So we were open until around 9 p.m., but we generally only have at most 10 families around 6:30 to 7. I work mostly outside as a ride attendant, so I get a lot of customer interaction from people all the time, and don't usually think much of it. Now on to the story. I had come into work around 3 p.m. and my day was going normal. At around 3:30, I was running one of the roller coasters, which has a big box for the operator to run the ride from. These two kids show up. One looked about 8 and the other about 15 or so. They seemed very sweet and very funny, so I was just enthusiastically telling them the rules and just being kind as I possibly could so they could enjoy themselves. As soon as the ride was finished, they'd run from the exit right back onto the line to go again, which isn't unusual because I get kids that do that all the time. Soon enough, they stopped riding and waved me off as they ran to some other ride to have fun. At some point afterwards, one of my coworkers came up to the switch positions with me and sent me off to do the tilt-a-whirl. As I'm walking down, I see from a distance a man in a black shirt standing at our gem mining station. He was just holding his hand in the water, so I was going to ignore him as I made my way to the ride. As I'm getting closer, he looks me up and down and asks for my name. I couldn't lie about it, obviously, since I had a name tag on, so I just told him. He then proceeds to say, "Do you think I can see you later tonight?" Which I respond, no. Walk away to the ride I was operating and told a coworker about what had just happened. We laugh it off as it were nothing, and I sent him on his way to the ride he had to run. Not even 5 minutes later, the guy shows up to my ride with the two kids I had led on the roller coaster I was previously running. I'm of course not looking forward to letting him on, but I toughed it out since the kids were trying to enjoy themselves. They walk up to the entrance of the ride, and I asked the man if he could hold the fence door open as I scanned his wristband. He responded with, "Of course, I'll do anything for you. Whatever you want." I scanned their wristbands, and the scanner showed they had run out of credits, so I made sure to tell them. The younger kid with them looked really upset, so I told them they could get on the ride this one time, and then they had to go back to the front and get more credits. I put them on, explained the rules of the ride, and ran it as usual. The entire time that ride was running, I noticed the man was just staring at me. His eyes literally never left me. I tried my hardest to just avoid his gaze, and also tried to not seem alarmed because his kids were in the other cart joking and making funny faces and gestures at me, trying to make me laugh, so I just pretended I didn't notice the man. Once the ride finished, the kids stood up and he said he wanted to go again. I felt really bad for him, and since there wasn't a lot of people in line, I just told him he could go one more time. The older kid, however, felt dizzy, so we got off the ride while the man and the younger child stayed on. I ran it again. I noticed the man was still not letting his gaze off of me. Towards the end of the ride, I saw he was lifting up his lap bar, so I told him to leave it down, and later, once the ride came to a stop, I looked him over and told him about the front counter, only to notice that he had his hand in his pants to make his crotch more noticeable. I was highly disturbed, of course, because I was literally not trying to be forced to look at some dude's excited face. Quickly made sure they left and just avoided looking at the man the entire time. Once I had no more customers, I made sure to go to my supervisor at the time. I explained to her what had just happened. She didn't know what the guy looked like, just what his older son looked like. As I was telling her, I saw the older son in the parking lot leaving, so we assumed they were gone for good at that point, and we sort of just went back to working. I was still on edge, however, because it was super uncomfortable, so I just continued to talk to my coworkers to pass the time. Around 6 or so, my supervisor asked me to take the cardboard down to the dumpster. I went down alone, so there weren't many people nearby. The dumpster is sort of close to some rides, so you can see what was going on from other points at the park. As I'm throwing away the cardboard, I notice a figure walking down towards the dumpsters, and see that it's the same guy from earlier. He had come back to the park. I start to freak out, because I didn't have my walkie-talkie on me and there wasn't anyone nearby to do anything. He kept walking closer and closer, eyeballing me ever so often, as I internally start panicking and getting increasingly more nervous and nervous. I thought in that moment that I was going to be kidnapped, and I did not know what to do. Thankfully, my supervisor saw him from a distance and started speed walking in my direction as well. She walked right past him before he could get to me, and he did a double take and just stood there as if he wasn't walking towards me that entire time. She then walked me back up and told me that she didn't know if that was the guy, but didn't want to leave me there alone. She then switched me to another ride and said she'd make sure he did not follow me. She had told some other coworkers about the situation so they could keep an eye on me as well. That guy still kept lingering around some areas looking at me, trying to be near me when they thought my guard was down. Every time my coworkers thought he was getting close, they'd stare nearby me to make sure he left me alone. At some point, his youngest kid came to the ride I was operating at, and he stayed on until about closing time, so the guy was kind of nearby for that entire time. Right before closing, I was offered a ride home from one of my coworkers because he didn't want me walking through the parking lot alone. We go outside and hang out with a few more coworkers on the stairs for a bit, and that's when we noticed this car that had been sitting in the parking lot. Even though at that point we had been closed for about 45 minutes, the guy was still there, with his family and everything just lingering. There were no other cars or customers in the parking lot except for them. So I assume this dude had to have had his own family involved because he was just waiting there. I can't see any other reason he'd be there. It felt just too coincidental that his family so happened to stay longer than they had to. I kept nervously looking over to see what he was doing, and he was just staring at us in the direction while he sat with his family inside the car. Thankfully, at some point they finally left, but I still couldn't feel uncomfortable at the thought. I'm so glad I had some responsible and caring coworkers, because if not, I have no idea what would have happened to me. Hey everyone, thanks for listening if you stuck around at this point. If you haven't yet, please hit the like button, the subscribe button, and that notification bell to be notified of future episodes when they come out. If you have a true scary story of your own, feel free to send it to my email or post it to my subreddit. You can stalk me on Twitter, you can stalk me on Facebook, and you can also stalk me on Instagram. All these links are below. What's up YouTube, it's your fucking boy, and I know I haven't posted in like 10 days again, and you're probably like, Alex, you piece of shit, why can't you just post on a normal basis, you fucking worthless no, yeah, I know I suck. I'm trying to get more consistent, and I promise I'm trying my best, but it's summer outside, and it's really nice outside, and I like to ride my motorcycle and build stuff in my garage, and then mow my yard and get a beer and stand there and look at it and be like, damn, those lines are fucking clean, bro. And then I give myself a high five and smack myself on the butt and be like, great job, you're such a dad, good job, bro. And then I'm like, oh yeah, you have a YouTube channel, probably go in there and record something, right? No, don't do that. Just go drink beer instead. Go do fuck all instead. Promise I'm gonna be more consistent. Just be patient with me. I this episode. Drop a comment below. Tell me how much you likey. I'm such a fucking idiot. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.